All right, Fresh. Let's go to the game of the week. It's LSU traveling to the state of Florida. We'll see how it remains after the hurricane here. No, we'll be fine. It's in Orlando playing Florida State, the Seminoles. Man, Fresh, this was a classic of a game for us last year. Jaden Daniels is back for LSU. I'm intrigued to see what they're going to be able to do over at LSU. How do they kind of come back after the fact here? This is a game where I wish that I was still living in Ohio. I could go grab me some Dairy Dock ice cream. If you aren't familiar, guys, in MASH, they always talked about Tony Paco's hot dogs. On the Irrational Confidence podcast, Haps always talks about Dairy Dock ice cream out of Ohio. If you haven't been to it, get me a large flurry watching this game, because that's how excited I am to see LSU versus Florida State, because I think this game, while we've said this is a showcase here, this is a opportunity to show us what you're able to do. Florida State, are you a legit national championship level team? There's some people that say they're really good, but LSU, are you a team that could win the SEC and really make some noise in the playoffs? You want to say, yeah, LSU won the West last year and put some points up against Georgia, but those things are out there. Fresh, tell me where you're seeing LSU and Florida State. Current spread is LSU by 2.5.
First off, what a difference a year makes. We were previewing this game to kick off last year, and it was more like we're only previewing it because it was names, LSU, FSU. It wasn't both these teams. There was unknowns under Brian Kelly, tons of transfers. They had 2 walk-ons starting on the offensive line, I think, and then Florida State was coming off of 2 terrible years under Mike Norvell. His job was on the hot seat, and they were in the Bayou, and they both show up, and it had a real clunky start. And somehow it ended with a lot of chaos and the extra point, but it became a dramatic football game. And then both teams took off from there, and they both grew in their own identity as the season went on. And now here we are talking. Both are in the top 10. College football playoff expectations, conference title game expectations. It's a 365 turnaround compared to this time last year where we are now, and it just shows where sometimes you get guys who they finally click, and the coaching staff maybe finally gets them to go, or the players finally show up. And I'm interested to see now with the expectations of these two teams, how do they live up to those expectations? Each of these both teams, they play the last game in the exact same stadium they're playing this game at. They both played their bowl game in Orlando, and now they're playing it here at Camping World Stadium together in Orlando. So they know the stadium well. They don't have to worry about finding a new, where's the locker room at? All that stuff's gone. It's all here. But now the expectations are 10 times higher. You can't come in this game and mess around like, we're still trying to figure our feet out. The expectations add to that pressure of showing up and having to play perfect every single game. Jordan Travis has been hearing how great he is all year. Johnny Wilson, all these guys. Jared Verse hearing how fantastic they are. Their recruiting right now is through the roof. They're bringing in players left and right. Mike Norvell's running around like he is, Bobby Bowden Jr. Everything is fantastic and all great if they're in Tallahassee. If you come into this football game and get curb stomped by LSU, and you go to and you go to Clemson in a couple of weeks, and you get beat by the Tigers, we're back to 2021, 2020 Mike Norvell at Florida State, where a bunch of pretenders. You got pressure. You've got to now match that level. You can't just, we're going to wait around. We're on the up and coming. No, Jordan Travis might be gone next year. A lot of these guys might be going out. If you don't win now, some of those recruits might decide, skip town. Like, I'm better off somewhere else. This game means a lot. On the other side, Brian Kelly, you came in there with the fake accent. You tried to acclimate yourself and win people over, and you kind of look like a bumbling fool. You go into that game, and that team looked, I'm not going to lie, I'm sure you even admit it, they looked pretty rough in that first half. Somehow, but you went in the locker room, and you got that LSU football team to focus. You got players in the right spot, and that second half, you looked like a real football team. You lost, but you played much better. Season built out. You kept moving through, You got destroyed by Tennessee, but you kept growing. You kept the football team growing as a group. And where and behold, you got yourself to Atlanta. You played great. You blew out Purdue in your bowl game. But now where do you go? Everyone, you lost a couple games. No one really cared. Now where do you go? Now Alabama has a target on you because you beat them last year. Now everyone expects you to get back to Atlanta. Now, how do you come in this football game and actually beat Florida State? These are what I want to see. It's a matchup of just both two coaches and the identities of their program, but also the star power. You got the two quarterbacks, Travis and Daniels. You got receivers like Malik Neighbors and Johnny Wilson. You got Harold Perkins Jr. and Jared Verse. You got stars all over the field. But which one of these coaching staffs can harness all that talent and get them to play this football game to win? And then not only this football game, but for the entire season to maintain a focus to get them where they have to go and meet the expectation. Because right now, you're going to be held to a standard. 8-4 for a team going into last year would have been a great year. You 8-4 this year, that's a horrible season, but it really depends on where you started at, perspective and expectations. And it means you have to match them. You've got to keep a level head the entire time. You can't play out of control. You can't play out of too emotional. You've got to play steady. You can't succumb to, yeah, but. Well, you're not 2022 anymore. You're 2023. You got to shake it off and come into this football game. I think Brian Kelly is a better head coach to get that team organized at LSU than Mike Norvell. Mike Norvell has not seen this true success. He had a great year, one good year at Memphis, and when they were good, he pieced out and went to Florida State. He didn't have to coach at Memphis with the expectation. I think Brian Kelly's better fit to manage all the expectations and the talent and drive them in the right direction. He was able to do it at Notre Dame. People don't like what he did at Notre Dame. He never won a national title, but he made Notre Dame a top 8 team every single year. He kept them consistent. I think he does it here at LSU and is able to manage the expectations and the focus. Now, we've had this debate. This debate's gone all summer. Who needs this game more? Well, honestly, if one team gets blown out in this football game, I find it very, very tough for them to run the table, much less run the table and get into the playoffs, just because this game will still hang over them. Like the Oregon loss to Georgia last year, as they were making progress as they were rebounding, people still said, yeah, but you got destroyed by Georgia. Would you be a playoff team? If you lose a close game, it might be able to give you a chance if you ran the table to get into the playoff. But the winner puts themselves in a huge chariot moment where they can pin the flag of, I've beaten a top 10 team in my first game. I have a pretty good schedule I can add to my resume as I go forward. I'm in a great spot. I really think LSU, if they win this football game, it helps them get past maybe a loss to Alabama and keep them in the conversation. If they did somehow navigate past Alabama and got to Atlanta again, it gives them a shot. Florida State, if you lose this football game, your Clemson's really your only true makeup as a big win. And if you have to go to Death Valley, that's a tough one, to host. So it's much more important right now. I think LSU can survive it, but it's much more important for FSU to come out and be focused and play good, because if LSU comes out and takes care of business, they're locked in. I think they're in great shape. With that said, I think LSU takes care of business and they win big. Florida State just cannot handle it
Ooh,
as the game goes on. Tigers take it, easily cover.
wow. Easily cover. Well, I mean, the spread's only 2.5 here, Fresh. So easy cover is 4 points
It will.
more,
I'm going
double
to say
digit.
we're going to say 10, 14 points.
Ooh. Well, something I learned a long time ago from Bobby Boucher is the medulla oblongata. But here we go, Fresh. I think this is the first time, too, ladies and gentlemen, please mark this down. In 3 years of doing a podcast here, the first time Fresh has talked about an LSU game and not said something about crawfish and smelling bourbon and all that jazz
Well,
right there about the
the game's played
tailgate.
in Orlando. The game's played in Orlando. I mean, it's the smell of
They,
bourbon sort of reverberates from the swamp there in the bayou. It's a little different.
yeah,
You
so
get,
they still bring that
they don't
stuff
have bourbon
over
at Disney
there.
World. They don't have bourbon at Disney World or on a middle of I-4 in Orlando. It's a different vibe.
You haven't been to the right places then. So, all right, Fresh, let's take a look at this here. I'm with you on a lot of this here. You take a look at Florida State and what they're able to do here. Listen, Jordan Travis is a heck of a quarterback. You take a look at all the skill positions that Florida State has. You take a look at Trey Benson, you take a look at Johnny Wilson. But I think the biggest thing is the Michigan State transfer, Keon Coleman. I think he's going to be huge for it because he adds another weapon there. Are you going to be able, the question really to me is, are you going to be able to protect Jordan Travis in this game? Mason Smith, whatever you want to say about it, is suspended for this game or he's injured for this game. I can't keep track of what's going on with that whole ordeal there. But you take a look in Florida State, that's the one thing that LSU's got to do. They got to be able to pressure the quarterback. They got to be able to make Jordan Travis uncomfortable. If he's uncomfortable in this game, then I think that LSU is going to be able to boat race the Seminoles really, really fast in this one, and it might get out of hand quick, fast, in a hurry. If they're able to control the football and control the clock in this game, and they kind of take their time, move the ball up and down the field on LSU, then watch out. Really, I think that Florida State's got a good chance to win this game. On the reverse side, LSU, Jaden Daniels is coming back. And I said this the other day to somebody. I said, one of the first things we ever saw was Jaden Daniels for Arizona State. And we said he had like a really good year for Arizona State. And we talked all about him about, hey, what is he going to do the next year at Arizona State? And he kind of fell flat on his face because I think that people got the tape out on him, and was he able to make that level of adjustment? I am worried about that as a repeat offense here for LSU. Is the tape going to be out on Jaden Daniels? Are they going to have to move to Nusamara? And you saw that Garrett was able to do quite a bit in the SEC championship game. Now, again, that game got out of hand pretty quick, but he was able to move the ball up and down the field there. I think that's an honest to goodness conversation that we need to have until we see Jaden Daniels just completely take control of this job and not have it. Because we do, as much as people want to say oh, just look at the tape from the previous year, we can kind of point back to his time over at Arizona State and say, look, he was really good that first year for the Sun Devils. But look at year 2 and look at when defenses started being able to figure out his little tells or anything like this. Freshman, there's an old show that we just passed the 20th anniversary on, and on ESPN. It was the show Playmakers. One of my favorite shows, folks. If you've never seen Playmakers, it's on YouTube. Find yourself a copy. It's one of the best shows you'll ever see, and it's only out for a season on ESPN because the NFL made you cancel it. But there's an episode where the linebacker is going up against a dual threat quarterback, and they are in a parking lot outside of a club, and they see that he double taps the ball right before it passes it. Is Jaden Daniels finally giving up his tells? Is he able to kind of develop that counter punch that you see the really good quarterbacks develop from year 1 to year 2 in a system? I really need to see that. I'm looking to see the running game too with LSU. Josh Williams is there. It looks like he's going to get the nod there. You got Logan Diggs. You got Noah Kane. All 3 of those guys are going to get touches, I think. And then you got the wide receivers. There's talent over there. And really, I don't know how much we haven't talked about Harold Perkins Jr. on the defense for LSU. Everyone wants to talk about Mason Smith, but Perkins Jr. is a phenomenal linebacker. I believe he made our second team all-confidence, all-American team. Yeah, he's absolutely ridiculous. It's going to be a game of whose team can do what they want in this game. I think and again, it can't be just like one drive we do what we want, the next drive. I mean, I'm talking about taking full control of a football game for a full quarter or a full half there and kind of start to put this game out of reach there. I think it matters a lot to Florida State because they don't have as many opportunities down the road. LSU is going to have a chance to go up against an Alabama. LSU is going to have a chance to go up against an A&M. They're going to have other chances to kind of rectify if they lose a game. We talked about earlier in the show, Fresh, if South Carolina lost to UNC and then 2 weeks later go in and beat Georgia. LSU loses to Florida State. They go in and wind up beating Alabama a few weeks later on in the seasons. I know it's a little bit later, but no one's going to remember this loss to Florida State. If Florida State loses to LSU, and if they lose in bad fashion, and they beat Clemson, I still think people will talk about that. I think it'll be but. Yeah, you beat Clemson, but you lost to LSU, and it doesn't matter. Oh, you lost to Florida State week 1, but you beat Alabama. And I think that there's a different level of conversation that goes on here. I think LSU is going to get revenge. I don't think it's going to be a blowout. The 2.5, I feel like this is a field goal game. I think 2.5 is a perfect spread for this game. I don't know where I would lie on it because I think that the spread is right there. So, I would probably take LSU to cover it just to kind of want to play that role there. But I think this is going to be a really good game on Sunday night, and it's going to give us a lot to talk about going into the season.
Yeah, this game's gonna be a lot of fun. And there's something like LSU when they play in the state of Florida, whether it's the swamp or in this case, they somehow they bring a mystique. You really just can't explain it, but somehow they just show up and crazy things happen, and they find ways to get wins. Whether it's Marco Williams throwing a shoe and giving them a ball, another play, things like that. Crazy happen for LSU. So Florida State, if your fans are getting all hyped up, I would keep just there's a little Cajun Bayou mojo going on that might get you. So be sharp about that. And then folks, offensive line play on both sides. That's something we both haven't really mentioned, but whichever one can own the trenches, because both defensive fronts are very, very good. Which offensive line can hold their own for 60 minutes, do just enough to keep their teams going forward, will win the football game.
Yeah, absolutely.